Howdy and welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of archaeology because we're going to be working with Steve. Steve, how you doing?
The original paleo man.
Oh man, we got a couple things lined up, but the first thing that we're working on is using this piece of steel that Steve and I made about 2 years ago at his shop in Florida to forge ourselves out a straight razor.
It's going to be epic.
It's going to be epic. We're going to be doing some twisting, we're going to be doing some bladesmithing. Steve's going to teach us how to carve. He's been doing these goblin faces on the ends of antlers for a very long time, and he's very good at it. And then at the very end, we're going to cap it off by using this thing to clean ourselves up. Well, we won't be using it. Someone who's qualified to use a straight razor will be using it.
Right. I feel better.
With that, let's go ahead and jump on in. Now, for this pattern, we started off with a W's pattern, and that was 3 layers of steel, so that we ended up with a big kind of blob in the middle, and then 2 C's kind of covering it on the outside. We stacked that up, so we've got about 15 layers of those. We then crushed it into a triangle shape. We took those triangles, and we stacked them with a little bit of 1080 and 15N20 in the middle. And this was the supporting pattern for a knife that we did a little while ago. It just ended up looking pretty organic and cool. But what it's going to do when it's twisted is look really cool. We're going to get some cool geometric lines mixed with a little bit of organic shaping in there. I think it's going to look really nice on our straight razor. So this is the plan for the straight razor itself. It's not very long. It's about 1 7/8 inch cutting edge. It's a little less than 1 inch wide. And the handle that we're going to be using is this piece of antler. Now, I found this a couple years ago in Washington, and I've been hanging on to it ever since then. And this right here is going to be the canvas for Steve carving in a cool goblin face. So with our plan laid out, let's fire up the forge and get things hot.
That'll make it happen. Fire in the hole.
We're going to start breaking this thing down to fit into the small twisting dies under the little giant power hammer. Yeah. All right, you want to cut it off?
Grip on this end.
Is it? We forged smaller square tenons onto the ends of the bars to fit into the smaller dies since we stripped them out on the larger set. Right. Hold on. Oh. We sheared it. Well,
That's twisted.
it's awfully twisted. That's good.
I like that.
I like that too. This is gonna look so good. After the twist and initial flatten, it's good to grind off the major ridges of the twisted steel to make sure everything looks clean inside the billet. Yeah, I think probably what we'll want to do is cut it off about right there and forge our blade from this section.
Okay.
I start by isolating the tang of the material, then move on to widening the blade of the razor itself. Well, the blade is cooling down. I'm going to go ahead and chop off the end of our antler and then cut the slot that our blade is going to sit in so that Steve can get started on the goblin carving on the very end. Widening out the slot didn't go so hot, so Steve took it to the abrasive chop saw to open it up. Carving begins with some heavy background removal using a large burr before moving on to finer details with a smaller bit. The next step is going to be drilling our pinhole. I think we're gonna, is it a 16th inch pin?
That's enough.
You know what? We'll go 3/32.
Give it a little more beef.
Yeah, and get a mark punched out. And with the pinhole drilled, it's into the even heat treating oven. So now that we've got our main components ready for finish work, we've got the blade ready for hand sanding and the handle with our little carving in there ready for hand sanding as well. Steve just flattened down some copper. That's going to be a little bearing surface around the outside of where the pinhole is going to be on the handle. And we're ready to drill our hole, make our washers, and finish up our blade. So I'm going to make a weaker dilution of the ferric chloride, which is what we etch with, because I want to be really careful with how deep we etch this knife. And so we're going to make it nice and weak so we can really control it and it won't build up any oxide on the 15 and 20. This is going to be a nice weak dilution. Here it's been about 45 minutes or so and the knife is looking really good. It's time to go ahead and continue on with our etching process by cleaning it up and then putting it in some instant coffee. Perfect. All right, with the knife etched, we're now ready to do some sharpening. There's our blade. And one of the cool things about straight razors is that they actually have a built-in sharpening system. You see we have this really fat spine here and a very thin edge. That means that when you lay the blade flat on the stone, we're actually going to be contacting along the spine and along the edge, and that gives you a built-in sharpening guide of how much angle you want to be putting on there. Now we're going to be using really light pressure here because we have such a thin edge it'll flex against the stone if we push too hard. What I'm looking for here is I want to make sure that I've got an even bright line of color all the way along the edge, because that means that I'm going to be having a good burr all the way along the edge, that we've reached down to true material in the center. And there's still a couple spots where we haven't quite gotten there. This is a 1,000 grit stone that we started with. You guys can probably see a little bit. We've got a bright line just along the ridge line of where that grind ends, but it's really, really small because we're taking off just the tiniest amount of material. This edge was so thin already that we really don't have a whole lot of material to remove to get down to our true edge. And now we're moving on to a 3,000 grit stone. Now with this grit, I'm not really looking to remove a whole lot of material. I'm mostly just refining the scratch pattern and kind of polishing the edge. And the last stone that we're using is this 8,000 grit stone. The last step here is going to be stropping the razor on this, on the smooth side of the veg tan leather, and there's a little bit of white buffing compound worked in there to give it just a little bit of polishing ability, and we're just going real light and get that thing polished all up, get the burr off of there, get it ready to pop some hair. All right. I think that'll do it.
Okay, and I think what I'll do is I'll put that little steel brush in that fordham and give that just a little bit of a polish.
With the razor wrapped up, we drove on down to Big Sky to visit my friend Kyle. Kyle, how you doing?
Good, how are you, Will?
Doing good. I'm ready for a haircut and a shave. I know I don't look like it. I haven't shaved in 4 days in preparation for this.
Yeah.
So Kyle is the owner and operator of Man of the Woods Barbershop here in Big Sky, Montana, which is the first barbershop in Big Sky.
It is, yep. We started back in December, and we've been cranking ever since, so it's been really good.
It's very cool. I did some of the little hooks and handles and knickknacks in here, and so it's my go-to spot for a haircut, which is fun, although it is an hour and a half away from where I live.
It's a big drive, but it's worth it, I hope.
It's worth it. It is worth it. Speaking of it being worth it, let's get started.
Let's do it.
come, but it works. Well, with the razor wrapped up and us looking nice and fresh, we're gonna have to call it there for today's episode. Steve, thank you so much. I feel like Nicolas Cage in 2004 because I'm hanging out with a national treasure right now.
Well, when I die, I'll be buried treasure.
Oh my goodness.
But it's been brilliant, and really enjoyed working with you and family. And then, of course, we've had some outlaw friends show up, Shane Taylor and Coulter. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And doing the tour of the area, and you got a brilliant family, and I just thank you so much for having me, and we just had a ball.
Well, thank you, Steve. You guys don't know this because you're stuck behind a computer screen right now, but the bladesmithing community is a really tight-knit, very close community of people. I met Steve 3 years ago at a knife show in Atlanta, and I've been down to his shop several times in Florida since then, and we hang out whenever we see each other at knife shows, and that's just... He's a wealth of information, and it's just a real pleasure to get to hang out with him. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Before we end it, a couple things. Number one, Patreon. Patreon is probably the best way to support the channel right now as we're getting things up and running and getting the shop set up and organized and all of that fun stuff. Number two, I have a little bit of merch for sale on the site right now, just the Forge or Die stuff, but we got some more fun stuff coming in the next week or two, which I'm very, very excited about. It's a collaboration with a very talented artist friend of mine. Number three, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. All of those things help the algorithm and help the video do a little bit better. You guys have done absolutely amazing with that so far. I'm absolutely blown away by the level of engagement that I've seen on these videos. I hope you guys enjoy this one, and stay tuned for another fun video coming out probably later this week. I'm gonna try to build, I don't want to spoil it, I'm gonna try to build an integral bolster chef's knife in one day, start to finish. We'll see how it goes. Thank you guys. Goodbye.